For I stand here tonight facing west on what was once the last frontier. From the lands that stretch 3,000 miles behind us, the pioneers gave up their safety, their comfort, and sometimes their lives to build our new West. They were not the captives of their own doubts, nor the prisoners of their own price tags. They were determined to make the new world strong and free, an example to the world, to overcome its hazards and its hardships, to conquer the enemies that threatened from within and out. Some would say that those struggles are all over, that all the horizons have been explored, that all the battles have been won, that there is no longer an American frontier. But I trust that no one in this intersection would agree with that sentiment. For the problems are not all solved, and the battles are not all won. And we stand today on the edge of a new frontier, the frontier of the 1960s, the frontier of unknown opportunities and perils, the frontier of unfilled hopes and unfilled threats. Woodrow Wilson's New Freedom promised our nation a new political and economic framework. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal promised security and succor to those in need. But the new frontier of which I speak is not a set of promises. It is a set of challenges. It sums up not what I intend to offer to the American people, but what I intend to ask of them. It appeals to their pride. It appeals to our pride, not our security. It holds out the promise of more sacrifice instead of more security. The new frontier is here, whether we seek it or not. Beyond that frontier are uncharted areas of science and space, unsolved problems of peace and war, unconquered province of ignorance and prejudice, unanswered questions of poverty and surplus. It would be easier to shrink from that new frontier, to look to the safe mediocrity of the past, to be lulled by good intentions and high rhetoric, and those who prefer that course should not vote for me or the Democratic Party. But I believe that the times require imagination and courage and perseverance. I'm asking each of you to be pioneers towards that new frontier.
It's my very special privilege and honor to welcome each of you to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum and to this, the 5th annual John F. Kennedy New Frontier Award. Together with us here today are the members of the Institute of Politics Senior Advisory Board Committee, who I'd like to acknowledge. Milt Gewirtzman, a former advisor on special issues to President John F. Kennedy. Trey Grayson, Secretary of State of Kentucky, also a co-chair of our Student Advisory Committee when he himself was a student here at Harvard College. Heather Campion, Senior Advisor, State of USA. Also present are members of the New Frontier Awards Committee, Ronnie Cooper, Dan Fenn, Carol Fulp, and Rick Musial. The Institute of Politics was created now more than 40 years ago to inspire young people to become engaged in politics, to become engaged in public service. It is a living memorial to President John F. Kennedy. Our purpose, first and foremost, is to introduce Harvard students to the best political and public service leaders here in this country and around the world. And I'm pleased that today we're about to acknowledge and present to you two of our nation's very best young leaders as they accept the John F. Kennedy New Frontier Award. The Institute of Politics and the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation created this award to honor young Americans who are changing their communities and their country and their world with their commitment to public service. To speak more about the award, I would like to introduce Ambassador John Shattuck, who is the CEO of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation. Ambassador Shattuck.
Thanks, Bill, very, very much. It's an honor to co-chair the New Frontier Awards Committee with someone as distinguished in his career of public service as Mayor Purcell, a former mayor of Nashville. I think he captures the spirit of what it is that these awards are all about. And I want to start by thanking President Kennedy, President Caroline Kennedy, in particular, who leads the Kennedy Library Foundation, for all she is doing, and not only for the Kennedy Library, but above all for our country and the way she's inspiring the work we do here. Thank you very much, Caroline. I also want to thank the members of the Foundation Board who are here with us. Some of them also serve on the Institute of Politics Board: Carrie Bell, Morris Child, Heather Campion, Carol Fulp, Randy Cooper, and Jackie Jenkins Scott, as well as Tom Putnam, the director of the Kennedy Library. And I want especially to thank Ann Aaron, director of our awards program, Christian Flynn of the IOP, and Ann's assistant, Jess Messer, for the outstanding job that they've done for this year's New Frontier Awards. Could we give them a round of applause? These awards were established in 2004 as a way to recognize and celebrate young leaders in our country who are working to advance the public values of John F. Kennedy. The New Frontier Awards have helped build 2 bridges, and bridge building is a very important enterprise in our country today. First, a bridge between the Kennedy Library and the Institute of Politics. And second, a bridge between citizen activism and electoral politics. The Kennedy Library and the IOP, I think, represent 2 very important parts of the living memorial to President Kennedy. One that connects the history of his presidency to the issues of our time, and the other that promotes the noble art of politics, as he would put it, and public service that were at the heart of his presidency. And for many years, the Kennedy Library and the Institute of Politics have grown and flourished as separate institutions here and down on Columbia Point. We welcome all of you as visitors at any point. But today, and for the last 5 years, in the New Frontier Awards, we have come together to celebrate the vision of a young president who inspired millions of young Americans to ask not what their country could do for them, but what they could do for their country and their community. And this year, of course, that call has sounded more powerfully than ever before. Now, the New Frontier Awards have also built another bridge, not only between the Kennedy Library and the Institute of Politics, but a bridge between citizen activism and electoral politics. And when we started the awards 5 years ago, I think we should remember that the views of young people about elective politics were not the same as they seem to be today. The IOP conducted a survey at that point of college students that showed that 81% saw community activism as a great way to influence public policy, but only 30% said they had a good opinion of electoral politics. Well, hopefully all that has changed this year with the huge participation of young people in the presidential campaign. And if so, we can now celebrate the crossing of that second bridge. And that's why there are 2 New Frontier Awards, one for a young community leader whose activism is changing the political landscape on a public issue, and the other for a young elected leader whose activism is changing the world of politics. And the New Frontier Award for an elected official is known as the Fenn Award. And Dan Fenn, the first director of the Kennedy Library, is here with us today. And Dan, if you could please be recognized. Thank you. President Kennedy once said that a nation reveals itself not only by the citizens it produces, but by those it honors. And the recipients of the John F. Kennedy New Frontier Awards, I think we would all agree, are role models for a new generation of activists in the community and public servants. They demonstrate the qualities of leadership that President Kennedy most admired: civic-mindedness, pragmatism, vision, and tenacity in addressing public challenges. It's an honor, Bill, to co-chair this year's awards with you, and I think it's a particular honor to be able to congratulate our two award winners who will be introduced in a moment. Thank you very much.
Because of the very special nature of this award, it is awarded in opposite years at the library and here at the Kennedy School of Government. We're especially pleased to be here in the Kennedy School of Government today and to have our Dean, David Elwood, present with us, together with many members of our faculty and many students, both of the graduate and obviously the undergraduates of Harvard College. In that context, then, it is a special privilege for me to have the opportunity to present to you Caroline Kennedy. She is the president of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation and a member of the Institute of Politics Senior Advisory Board, which you already know. She's an attorney and best-selling author and editor of 7 books. My favorite, Patriot's Handbook, will actually be awarded to each of our award recipients today. Ms. Kennedy serves as director of the Commission on Presidential Debates, vice chair of the Fund for Public Schools of New York City, honorary chair of the American Ballet Theater, and is a member of the Profile and Courage Award Committee. She recently served as co-chair of the President-elect Barack Obama's Vice Presidential Search Committee. She is a graduate of Harvard University and Columbia Law. Please join me in welcoming Caroline Kennedy.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you. This is a very special place to me and to all the members of our family, the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum, and I feel my brother's presence here. And today we had the meeting of the Senior Advisory Committee at the Institute of Politics, and that institution has been animated and carried forward by my uncle. So I think that these two memorials and this award in particular, which celebrates young leadership, is really a wonderful chance to gather and to celebrate in this season of leadership that we are celebrating across this country this year. This really is a special award for us, and I think Giovanna Negrete and Cory Booker exemplify the call to service that we saw in the video clip. And in our family, we were raised to believe that you're never too old or too young to get involved in public service and make a difference. Giovanna Negrete is providing the tools of political engagement to Latino communities across Massachusetts. Mayor Cory Booker is working to give the citizens of Newark a chance to build better lives after years of neglect and hardship. Together, they embody the spirit of public service that President Kennedy championed. They are bringing the qualities he mentioned of courage, perseverance, and vision and imagination to their quest, and they are really public role models for all of us and the kind of leadership that I think we're going to see more and more in the future. Giovanna Negrete is, as I said, helping to underrepresented communities to find their voices and become active participants in our dialogue. By encouraging and training talented Latinos to run for office, she's lighting a path for a new generation of leaders. Through her leadership of Oiste, she is providing vision and can-do spirit to a statewide network of political organizers and a whole new generation who's going to emerge to change their communities. She's an inspiring champion of political empowerment, and I am pleased to present Giovanna Negrete with the 2008 John F. Kennedy New Frontier Award.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. You know, being here reminds me of when I was a student here. I was a mid-career student in 2004, and we were in this very forum watching Senator Cory give his concession speech. And it was a moment where many of us were in dismay and despair, and there was a sense of hopelessness. And I just find that it's wonderfully ironic that we're here in 2008, 4 years later, in this very space, with a nation full of hope. To Caroline Kennedy, Ambassador Shattuck, Mayor Purcell, Mr. Fenn, and the Selection Committee, thank you very much for this wonderful honor. I'd like to thank my friends and my family that have come from all over the United States and Puerto Rico to be here with me today, and also to thank my grandmother, who is watching via internet from Vieques, Puerto Rico. You know, 10 years ago, Massachusetts was a very different place. There were very few Latinos elected to office, and the community didn't see fair representation, and were apathetic about politics and government. So a group of us got together and decided to change this, and we decided to create an organization that would train Latinos to run for office. But I think that the best way to talk about Oíste in my organization is through a story. So I'd like to talk to you about the story of Maria Carrasco. Maria is the city councilor in Lynn, currently, in the city of Lynn. She is a mother, a grandmother, whose children and grandchildren have gone through the Lynn public school system. And she came to us a few years ago, not wanting to run for office, but just to learn about the political process. And she went to a training that we did at Bunker Hill Community College. Now, you should know that our trainings are kind of eclectic. We have everyone from, seasoned elected officials to hairdressers come to our trainings. And one of our exercises is an exercise that is sort of a spin-off of American Idol, Latino Idol, if you will. And we have a panel of judges that critique, 3-minute speeches as to why you want to run for office, and we have everyone do this. So I'm, of course, Paula Abdul, because I love everybody. And then we have our Simon, who is really tough. He's actually, I think, here today, Lucas Guerra from Argus Communications. So we have our little panel, and I remember vividly the moment where Maria came up to speak and do her 3-minute speech. You see, Maria Carrasco is not your cookie-cutter candidate. She is, she is a beautiful immigrant from the Dominican Republic with, dark brown skin, and she looks like she came out of a Pedro Almodóvar movie, with her pink suit, with her pink shoes, and her pink accessories, and her pink lipstick, and her pink fingernail polish. And when she went up there, we realized a couple of things. We realized, one, she had no political connections, and we also realized that she had no experience in politics, and we realized that she had a very strong accent, very strong accent. And, the thing about accents, and I'll tell you this from experience, is that when people have accents, they're not listened to very well, and people tend to think that you don't have much to offer or anything to say. So we thought that would be a challenge for her, but when she went up there, I have to say, her message was crystal clear. She realized right then and there her own potential, so much so that Senator Jared Barrios, a seasoned politician, said, "You know what, Maria? I think you should run for office." And she did, and she won. And we were right there with her. But what's the most important thing about Maria's story is that she won in the city of Lynn, where only 18% of the population is Latino. She succeeded because she had a message that appealed to everyone, including Latinos who are concerned about the Lynn public school system. But Maria is just one example about how Oíste seeks to ensure that democracy works not just for Latinos, but for everyone. You see, this is important because today we live in a world where Latinos are seen as takers and not givers, where we're not valued necessarily for our contributions. So when Maria and others decide to run for office, others that we have trained, we're ensuring that she's contributing to democracy by ensuring fair representation. And when we ensure that voting rights are protected, like we did several years ago, when we advocated for redistricting process, a fair redistricting process, we contributed to the trust and accountability that we need in our government. And when we promote voter mobilization like we did just a couple of months ago, or maybe less than a month ago, when we made 15,000 calls to Florida in the past elections, we contribute to a true form of democracy. You know, we have enormous challenges before us, and we must ensure that democracy works for everyone. And this reminds me of a similar time in American history where we just saw a video of, where a famous man once said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." So here we are once again at a new frontier. And our community, the Latino community, has a saying for times like this, is "Sí se puede," yes we can. So I'd like to add a new chapter to "Sí se puede," echoing President Kennedy's words. ¿Qué haremos? What will we do for our country in this new frontier? What contributions can we continue to make? And I will end with a mission, because at heart I'm a community organizer and I must put you to work. And your mission is to leave here and ask yourselves, ¿qué haremos? What will we do? What will each of us do individually to meet the challenges of this, our new frontier? Thank you.
Mayor Cory Booker is inspiring people from all walks of life to invest in Newark's future and bringing hope to a city that has yearned for it. He is tackling Newark's many challenges with a spirit of openness and a commitment to reform. Under his leadership, the crime rate is down, new schools are in the works, and city parks are greener and safer. His example is a beacon for others. He is inspiring a new generation of people to take another look at politics and public service and to work in our most troubled urban communities. I'm delighted to ask Mayor Cory Booker to come up and accept the 2008 New Frontier Award.
I have a newfound trepidation whenever I speak after earlier this week, earlier in the last 7 days, being severely lampooned by Stephen Colbert. Colbert! For some of my language. I was watching this and I said, I long for the days of American politics before the days of YouTube and late night talk show hosts which dissect every word that you absolutely say. But at the same time, I long for something else. I'm very blessed to have a family that kept me very rooted in the idea of America. My parents fought these incredible battles before I was alive, joining their spirit and their energy and their labors and their sweat and sometimes even blood with other Americans, black and white, in some pretty historic chapters. From the sit-in movement that started in 1961 when my dad was at North Carolina Central University, to the March on Washington, which my mom was a school teacher and took the summer to volunteer with the Urban League and help plan for that historic day. But I grew up in a different world. I grew up post the Civil Rights Movement, and really as a first wave of black families that were enjoying opportunities that were paid for by the struggles of those who came before me. I was the first family in 1969. Actually, my parents had to get a white couple to pose as them. Ironically, the white couple's name was, I'm told, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, but they were not brown, they were white. My parents, with the Fair Housing Council, did a ruse and a sting that allowed us to be the first black family to integrate an all-white town. As my father used to say, we were the 4 raisins in a tub of vanilla ice cream. And so here I was in this incredible privilege with wonderful schools and neighborhoods, but my parents were very much determined to keep their 2 children rooted in ideas of America. So if you walked into my living room, one of the first things you would see was a bust of John F. Kennedy. and which was strange for me because it was our living room and dining room came together, and I would be sitting there eating my eggs in the morning, looking up and seeing JFK for the first 18 years of my life. And my parents, when they would sit down with us, and sometimes on the couch, I used to joke with my friends, I would sneak to the banister and listen over and lean and listen to the words of Richard Pryor, as he had many great records, which would balance out my parents' constant diet of righteousness that they would give us, because you would never sit down in my family at a couch without my mom reaching for some book to read from us. They would read the words of Kennedys and Kings. They would read the words of a George Washington or a Booker T. Washington. They wanted my brother and I to know that this nation was founded in perfect ideals, but that the history of our country has been the struggle to make real on these perfect ideals, because the reality was often such a savage contrast to what our nation claimed to be. And that we were the inheritors of this struggle. And as much advancement as our nation had made, we had the obligation to make real on that promise. So the words of these great men and women that echoed throughout my household, in both imagery as the bust of Kennedy and words as the books that line my parents' bookshelves, fueled within my brother and I a desire to continue that struggle. My brother, who is older than me, and I always say the better booker, right now in Memphis, Tennessee, is working on education reform as a leader of a charter school in that city. And I'm trying to mix my spirit and blood with a noble people in the city of Newark, and I'm very grateful that some folks from my city are here now. I have to say, though, that the lesson of our democracy continues to be taught to me. And there are days that I feel like giving in to despair, and it's people within my community who keep reminding me in very profound words of the hope of America. On difficult days when I sometimes feel doubled over with pain because of the realities I'm confronted with, I'm reminded by not only the words of my ancestors, the words I heard at my dinner table, but also the words of residents of mine. Kennedy said so profoundly, he talked about the country and not what you see. Some men see the way things are. And those words were echoed in the people of my city almost on a daily basis. My very first person that I met when I decided that my destiny was wrapped up with the city of Newark and that I wanted to be that noble profession, Giovanna, a community organizer coming out of law school, I met a woman who was a tenant leader in my neighborhood and thought I'd work with her. And I remember knocking on her doors and telling her that I wanted to help her. I was here from Yale Law School, thought big of myself. And she immediately said, "You want to help me?" And she looked at me with a skeptical eye. And I said, "Yes." And she pushed past me, closed her door, walked into the middle of one of the main streets in Newark, right in front of these high-rise projects, and said to me, "Well, you must first describe to me what you see around you." And I said, "What I see?" And she goes, "Yeah, describe to me what you see." And I said, "Well, I see high-rise projects. I saw an abandoned building that was being used for drugs, and just describe the neighborhood." And as if she knew John F. Kennedy's words, not in her mind, but in her heart and spirit, she said to me, "Boy, you could never help me." And she turned around and started walking away, and I ran after her, and I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "You need to understand something, boy, that the world you see outside of you is a reflection of what you have inside of you. And if you're one of those people who only sees darkness and despair, that's all there ever be. But if you're one of those people who sees hope, opportunity, love, sees the face of God, then you can be one of those people who makes a difference and helps me." And she left me there, and as I thought to myself, thus endeth the lesson. and I began my career with people who every single day are focused on moving America closer to the ideals that we profess in our songs and in our pledges, these ideals that still are not real. I believe now in my heart that the secret of great leadership is not standing before people and telling them which way we should go, but the greatest leaders of our time, like John F. Kennedy, were those that inspired, if not demanded, other people to be leaders themselves. The great thing about Newark is we are now trying to make real on our American credo, those three Latin utterances, e pluribus unum, all of us looking at each other for who we truly are. People who share a common cause, who must engage in a common struggle, who must dare to make the common sacrifice to claim our common destiny. This is the difficult work of America, of doing what is necessary to transform ideals into substantive reality in the most specific of ways. One of my favorite authors is Alice Walker, and she has this wonderful book called In Search of Our Mother's Garden. And if I can paraphrase one of my favorite pages in that book, where she says, "The true work of a revolutionary is being always concerned with the least glamorous of things. It's raising a child's reading level from the 3rd grade to 4th. It's filling out food stamps for people because they must eat, revolution or not. It's being there for our elders to write down their history because there is treasures in their words. It's always understanding that you must be there for the people, revolution or not." So our job in America is to transform what we say into what we do, is to look at those people in towns and neighborhoods who are engaged in this struggle and be of service to them. This, I believe, is our highest calling, and it's also our most selfish one, because history has shown that when you reach out to your brother, that you are reaching out indeed to yourself, and even more so to the generations to come, your children and your grandchildren. So I return to the solid ground of my childhood, of a dinner table with a bust of a president before me, and the words echoing all around me of those who came before me, who I can only hope that one day I can show just a small measure of their commitment to this country. One of the favorite stories or poems that my mom read for me came from the great Langston Hughes. And he said, "Let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, but yet must be, the land where everyone is free, the poor man, the Indian, the Negro, me. Who made America? Whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must make the mighty dream of America real again? Oh yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, yet I swear this oath, America will be." And now we leave this hallowed hall in a matter of moments to go back to that work. We in this generation of young people, and the generation that comes so quickly behind us, must know in our hearts that we drink deeply from wells of freedom that we did not dig. We eat fruits from a tree of liberty that we did not plant. And we have an abundant harvest of America from soil that we neither worked nor tilled. We who enjoy this abundance of our country must now fortify our spirits for the work that still has to be done. Integrity is aligning word with deed. Will we be a nation of integrity, or will we fail from the great calling that rang out from our time of our ancestors? I believe the answer to that question can never be given in words. It must be given in neighborhoods and towns and communities. It must be given by tenant leaders and teachers and those who are willing to do the humblest of work. Will we answer that great call? I believe if we do, we will not only change despair to hope, darkness to light, hatred to penetrating, persistent, proactive love. But I believe if we do that, we will finally truly unleash the truth of America. That we are not just a nation that started with a declaration of independence, but we are a nation whose history screams to a declaration of interdependence. That we will actually stand up as one people and lift a torch of the American dream that will light up this country and cast away darkness in other places as well. This is our destiny, but we now must collectively claim it. I believe in us. I believe in those words from my dinner table. I believe in the heroes from our past, but more importantly, I believe in the heroes of now. Together, I know in this generation, we can move our nation to the promised land. Thank you very much, and Giovanna, thank you.
I'm too old now for this award, but most of you are not. And I want to thank both of our recipients for showing us again the way. Thank you all for joining us here, and please be sure to stay. We're going to have a reception with both of our award recipients just immediately following the end of this ceremony. Thank you all very, very much.